With one act of treason, you
Averted the war.
Well, I think the greater good...
Don't talk to me about the greater good, Sunshine. I'm the Archangel fucking Gabriel. The greater good was we were finally going to settle things with the opposition once and for all.
Up. I don't suppose I can persuade you to reconsider? We're meant to be the good guys, for heaven's sake.
Well, for heaven's sake, we are meant to make examples out of traitors. So, into the flame.
Right. Well, it's lovely knowing you all. May we meet on a better occasion.
Shut your stupid mouth and die already.
So, you've reached the making of video. Thanks for checking it out.
Happy, 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 happy.
Right, so, the plan.
In this video, I'm going to be talking about the psychology of the music video that I made and the process that I went through. I'm going to do a deep dive into season 1 and 2, all of the scenes connected to the music video, the sort of reflection that I did around Crowley's character growth, that story arc, and how this is a really great reflection as well of how we experience memory, and specifically traumatic memories, and how they can kind of compound in each other, and how all of this impacts Crowley's character and helps lead to what happens at the end of season 2. So, this is your spoiler warning. In this video, I will be talking about a lot of things. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about kind of the different story arcs that Crowley and Aziraphale are going through. So, if you haven't seen Good Omens, go watch it. Come on, you know you want to. It is just a spectacular show, and it's so worth the time and energy. In fact, go read the book. The book is amazing, and really what started it all 33 years ago.
Vavoom.
Vavoom.
That's the plan. No.
In terms of how I'm going to be discussing these characters in general with gender, the characters of Crowley and Aziraphale are gender fluid because they are not human. They're an angel and a demon. So I'm going to refer to them by the actor's gender. With all characters in general, I will do this unless otherwise specified that the character has a specific gender or a non-gender. So, also, here's the thing. I'm going to give a little bit of a trigger warning. If you have experienced some kind of trauma or abuse, and you're someone for whom hearing about people experiencing trauma, being reminded of your own experiences, and thinking about them, that's a trigger, please be kind to yourself. I will be including the link to the next video with the exercise that you can do below, and you can skip right to that, so that you don't have to put yourself through something that you maybe not be emotionally up to. And I'll also leave a link for crisis hotlines worldwide, so if you are looking for support, feeling alone, you are not. There are resources out there, and I would really encourage you to talk to somebody. And on that note, all the ideas I'm sharing are my own. They're based on my own interpretation. I'm discussing really my process around this music video and around reviewing and looking at the footage and really thinking about the journey of this character, both from a cinematic perspective and also from the books. And from the book. And it's a way for me to explore and really think about, you know, how memory works and understanding this character better. And, you know, sort of also, I was feeling really angsty at the end of season 2 of Good Omens, and I needed a way to process that. So I went into fire and burning through stuff and transforming it, because that's just how my brain works.
If you're going to invoke fiction, you might as well do it properly.
If you haven't been introduced to Good Omens, well, let me tell you, it's so good. You know, it's a really rare thing for a book and a TV series to both have their own equal greatness. Usually one's better than the other, or they're very different, or even if the adaptation is failure, so it can feel very much the same. Both versions of Good Omens, both the TV version and the book version, are lovingly done, and the TV series both follows and really faithfully adapts the book, but also takes it beyond where the story was written. And it does so in some really beautiful ways, fleshing out some character development, some moments that aren't seen in the books, but which really add to those characters. And I am just so grateful that Neil Gaiman has taken the torch and run with this and continued the story. And also, I've had a soft spot in my heart for this particular story for a long time. So, if you're not a Good Omens fan, I will be sharing other content in the future, and it won't be Good Omens all the time, but this is currently where my heart and my soul are, is in all of the amazing writing, acting, storytelling, filmmaking, and just the fantasy and the romance of this amazing series, and all of the wonderful fans and the incredible group of people that have come together to support and lovingly discuss and just explore kind of what it means, and who are completely invested in the story. And one of the things I love about this is both the characters and the story itself, and also the way that Good Omens lovingly blows up all kinds of sacred cows and really pokes into and looks at what we believe, why we believe it, and how these stories that have shaped the world, these religions that have shaped the world, shape us, and asks great questions. So this is where I am right now. Good Omens for the win, and I promise it will come around to other things, but at the moment, if you are into Good Omens, welcome. I hope you enjoy this, and maybe you'll get something fun out of the meditation as well. And just sending all my love to the fandom, because I have just been touched and just given a little spark of joy in my heart that I haven't felt on the internet for a long time, ever since I discovered you guys. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, a bit of a dark horse. Novels, eh?
Yes, they were very good.
What? No, I'm just surprised, that's all. You think you know someone?
There is something very compelling about the contrast between the two main characters, Crowley, who is a demon, and Aziraphale, who is an angel, and how they both relate to each other and connect despite coming from very different worlds, and also the ways in which they are very different in how they understand the world, and yet that they can love each other and both love the earth at the same time. So I'm going to talk about the kiss, but not here. I know a lot of people, this is where they started. I'm coming back around to that, because for me what happened was the scene that really stuck in my brain was the scene where Crowley says to Gabriel, you tried to kill my best friend, and that line, I did not care for it gave me chills. It was such a powerful, meaningful line, and I really came back to that over and over and over again in terms of all of the emotions and the memories and the feelings that would have been wrapped up in that conversation with Gabriel, and the ways in which that impacts the things that Crowley's talking about, the unspoken aspects of that, and how they impact him as he moves forward in the series.
And I do remember, oh, very clearly, the look on your face, Archangel Gabriel. When you told my only friend to shut his stupid mouth and die. And I did not care for it.
When I first started writing about this particular set of video sequences and really working on the music video, thinking about it, I just titled it in huge letters, but they are in such different places.
Right.
What's the problem? Problem? Who said there was a problem?
Tone of voice.
I really looked at this whole season, and one of the moments that stuck out for me the most as being significant in terms of what's happening with Crowley and Aziraphale and Crowley's story and Crowley's character growth and evolution and some of the things that they're dealing with, some of the unspoken challenges that are there for Crowley to wrestle with, and the darker aspects of what's happening emotionally for that character is this scene where Crowley confronts Gabriel / Jim, who I will refer to as Gabriel because I am talking about Crowley's relationship with Gabriel. And in the moment that this is happening, Gabriel is Gabriel, not Jim, if that makes sense. In Crowley's mind, it's pretty clear to me that Crowley believes that Gabriel is faking or at least really doubts that Gabriel is genuinely free of memory and is testing him. And so he's not Jim, he's Gabriel. And that means that his face and those interactions also contain the weight of Crowley wrestling with all of the aspects of the relationship that were difficult for him.
Think hard. What is the very first thing you remember?
And that leads me to what I want to talk about, which is how memory and emotions connect and why these scenes are so pivotal and important, why I bundled them together the way I did and crafted the music video the way I did. Because for me, it was a kind of meditation on how we deal with the most painful experiences of our lives in memory and how we use those to transform and become more powerful as people. You know, I have a lot of interest in the human mind and the brain and how we process things. And memory is a funny thing. It can be a lot like, one of those nesting dolls. Each part of memory can contain another memory, which can contain another memory. And a whole series of things can be connected that aren't at first glance related, but they are connected emotionally.
What does your exactly mean? Exactly. I feel like your exactly and my exactly are different exactly.
Let's talk about how memory and emotions connect and why I think these scenes are so pivotal and so important to the story. I find it really interesting how we process memories and emotions. Memory is a funny thing. It can be a lot like those nesting dolls. You can have a memory within a memory within a memory within a different memory if they're all connected emotionally. One contains the seed of the other and so on. For example, say you have an experience that's really difficult and stressful, like you're having a fight with someone, and in the fight, you remember a time that someone important to you left you, because this is triggered by what's happening, and all the feelings from the past experience come out, plus you're feeling all the feelings that are currently happening. So later on, when you think back on the fight, the emotions that could come up could be not just the fight, but bundled within that, all of the emotions from the memories that you were flooded by or that came up for you in that moment. And they become connected, and you may not even remember the memory of the person who left. What you will remember is how painful that fight was, and how heart-wrenching, and how you thought that person was going to leave you. And it takes on additional weight, and it colors and shifts the way the memory is registering for you. So obviously then, if you then go on and you haven't addressed or found a way to kind of do something about this, you have another fight with someone else that triggers the memory of this fight, you see how this becomes a nested problem. So you have the fight, and then this brings up the past memory of the previous fight, which included within is the memory of that person leaving you. And throughout our lives, we collect these, and we can collect these large, you know, it's almost a snowball effect where things grow. And so then later, when we're trying to understand ourselves better and why we react the way we do and why things are painful, it can be complicated to unravel. And it can be difficult to understand why sometimes things that should not upset us or that we think are very simple and straightforward turn out not to be.
Listen, something big is going on in heaven. Do you know anything about it?
Possibly a little.
And why don't we go into your shop and discuss it there? Because there's a naked man there?
So let's talk about how this works, using Crowley as an example of a survivor of trauma. And we're going to talk about unpacking a whole series of memories that are bundled up together, theoretically, which I refer to as bookshop hell.
Has this got anything to do with why we aren't in your bookshop right now? Is it something I can help you with?
So I started by just taking in what's happening. So in the scene, Crowley is describing a memory. I was there. Now, it's a painful memory that we got to see in full glorious color in the previous season. And I immediately, because I was really drawn to this scene and how nuanced, intense, and layered it was. And I thought it would be interesting to actually sync up this with the memory and show it. And so I saw the memory in his brain of what had happened. And then when I was thinking about how to make a music video, I looked back at the scenes related to going through fire to help, or fire to find, or fire to save Aziraphale. And what I found again and again and again, in different forms, was Crowley literally walking, running, and driving into an inferno for Aziraphale. There's several memories from the first season that I think are probably nested into the story leading up to Armageddon that I looked at. So Crowley. Because these memories are nesting dolls and it would be confusing to bounce around, I'm going to start with the center of what I believe the pain is in all of this, the kind of thing that drives it all, which is the bookshop fire and the death of Aziraphale, who did discorporate and go to heaven. So his physical body died. Because this would be the core pain, right? Part of what makes the experience of the acting and the writing so brilliant is that all of these past experiences exist in the performance. You know, it gives it a level of complexity and depth and nuance, and it's just breathtaking in terms of what is said and unsaid. And we, as the audience, understand without having to have it explained, of course, because we were also there. Now, the burning down of the bookshop is the primary and largest memory, I think, with the greatest emotional impact because of their bond. Crowley experiences the absence of Aziraphale on Earth. His presence is gone. And that leads to believing that Aziraphale is dead. So Crowley throws himself into the flame, runs into the bookshop as it's burning down, looking desperately for his friend, thinking he has died, that someone has killed him. And then he grieves. He's alone. He thinks he's alone in all the world. There is no one to turn to. It's heartbreaking. He then sees Aziraphale's ghost, learns that he's still alive and well, and you have to think about immortal beings and the idea that for them not existing anymore, there's a definiteness to this that there wouldn't be for humans. There's always the question for humans of what happens to our souls after we die. There's an afterlife, potentially. But for these supernatural entities, they are the afterlife. So if they're gone, they're truly gone, and there is no where in all the universe that person could ever possibly be again. In order to help Aziraphale after He talks to his ghost. Of course, he drives through a literal inferno, holding his car together with imagination and just sheer willpower to help stop Armageddon from happening. And honestly, this is one of my favorite visually and as a plot point and as just the allness of it. I love this part. From both season 1 and 2, this is just some of the best. And in part, I think this is because this is when the narrator explains to us that Crowley is the only demon who has imagination. And that idea has stuck with me for a long time because that is such an important idea. Imagination would explain why Crowley is so connected to humanity and cares so much about the world and hates the idea of things ending and also has a hard time following the rules if they don't make sense because he has the ability to ask questions and he has the ability to think outside of the box. So many other things. And he's an artist, a creator. And because he asked the wrong questions, he was punished for the very thing that he was born with, that was innate and part of him. And then the ability for him to create is taken away. So he is left trying to be creative in the best ways he possibly can and innovate in the world, which again, I think is why he takes an interest in technology and finds creative ways of doing things that impact as many people as possible while causing the least amount of harm. And is mischievous because that creative force doesn't die, it doesn't go away. So he holds the car together. Him and Aziraphale work with Adam, the Antichrist, and the others. They avert Armageddon. They avert the war. But of course, heaven and hell are furious about their plans being thwarted, and so they announce they're both traitors. Crowley and Aziraphale switch faces because of a prophecy that they've been given, and when they each have to go to heaven and hell to face punishment for preventing the end of the world, they are playing each other. Which brings me to the body swap. About the body swap. So, at its heart, this is a scene about someone who has swapped faces with their best friend so they can take their punishment. And so Crowley goes to heaven, and there's a lot of painful history with heaven itself personally, obviously, and I wonder if this is their first time being there since the fall. So in 6,000 years. This would be personally epic no matter what. But then you're also watching them process what would be happening to the person that they love most in all the world as they take on this punishment. Of course, because Crowley has demonic powers, the hellfire that is supposed to destroy Aziraphale doesn't. And it's really, honestly, just perfection how this scene, how both of them go respectively to heaven and hell to save each other, and how that happens. It's just delightfully funny and entertaining and just wickedly amazing to watch. So Crowley, of course, has Aziraphale's face, is in heaven to be punished as a traitor for defying the great plan, the end of the world. And while Aziraphale is alive, Crowley has just faced down and survived the reality of living for the rest of time without him. And there's been such a small bit of time to come to terms with what that means and why it matters. These events, the bookshop fire, Armageddon, all of it, happened a day ago. So the trauma is now. It's all together. Think about it. Crowley has to grieve Aziraphale's death, goes into a burning building to try and find and rescue him, and then later, to stop Armageddon, drives through a raging inferno of a highway using willpower to hold his car together, and then has to watch his beloved Bentley blow up. This is without counting in having to meet Satan, all of the other things that happen in this process. And I can't imagine that these memories weren't playing on repeat as they stood into heaven, getting ready to walk into hellfire. Memory and experience can very often be related in our brain or triggered by common physical experiences. So fire would be a really powerful trigger. I mean, beyond this, it would have reopened all of that pain right after it happened in a new way, because the trigger was the idea of Aziraphale burning to death in a fire and someone wanting to kill them. Not only that, something that isn't talked about as much, but I think is probably also key here. Crowley has had to experience what it's like in heaven to be Aziraphale, dealing with other angels, and he's seen the cruelty and lack of care and disdain right up close and personal. I get the sense, this is my personal take, that Crowley really didn't understand how vicious heaven could be when he was talking to Aziraphale about it. As they say to Gabriel during the body swap, we're supposed to be the good guys. You know, playing a part, it's true, but those are Crowley's words. And I've always wondered if there wasn't a lot of Crowley in that question, because what is Crowley known for getting in trouble for? Asking questions that break his heart. Especially because that question is asked and then he's immediately rudely disabused of the idea that there is any kindness or grace to be found in heaven in that moment. And I think on some level, you know, there's this idea that Crowley is optimistic at heart, that they've kept going, a part of them that still saw heaven as a kinder, gentler place than hell. And this would have been a change in worldview. It would have forced Crowley to really understand something, maybe fully for the first time.
Sounds a bit unlikely.
Okay, what I hear you saying is, but hang on, because I know that this is true. Crowley has often said that they are the same, that there's no difference, but something I'm aware of is it's really, really common for survivors of abuse to wonder if they could have done something different, if they had just been different, a better person, somehow, if they weren't broken or flawed in some way, that things could have been different. To blame themselves for what happened to them. If maybe Crowley hadn't been so unforgivable, so impossible, if he hadn't asked the wrong questions, if he'd just been able to go along and try to agree and be positive, if maybe it would have been different. And that could be true even if intellectually Crowley understood. I mean, could Crowley have thought on some level, if I was just better, behave differently, was a different person, I could change things? Because if that was the case, he learned that it didn't matter how nice he was, or kind, or gracious.
Now that sounds unlikely.
Heaven was not nice or kind, it was cruel at heart. And in a lot of ways, I think this makes it worse than hell, which hides its evil not under shiny, gleaming floors and ceilings. I mean, maybe this is why he always gives in when he argues with Aziraphale. Because from a place of deep love, especially after the end of the events of Armageddon and leading into season 2, whatever ultimately makes Aziraphale happy is what Crowley chooses. Aziraphale is and has always been Crowley's side. Crowley's always said they were their own people. They were a team, and has lived that reality and said it in a billion different ways in their actions, truly committed to this idea. And so when everyone else says that it's an us versus them reality, and there's only one side or the other, and wants to pigeonhole you into one side that you don't even necessarily agree with, but you do your best to get along with just to survive, it takes a tremendous amount of inner strength of character to say no and to find a way to be your own person, your own side, to carve out something for yourself and not crumble under the reality of how big the problem is.
You have 3 reasons for calling me. You're bored, you need to tell someone about something clever you did before you pop, or something's wrong. This was your something's wrong voice.
It's nice to tell someone about the good things you've done.
I'm not suggesting, by the way, that it's healthy to warp your entire reality around another person. I mean, it's a romantic concept, but it's actually quite unhealthy. It's important to be balanced in a relationship, obviously. But in the case of these characters in these stories, I think it's fairly obvious that you have a character who's made a decision about their reality, what matters to them, who their team is that they're playing on. And that team is not a team anyone else is playing on. It's their own. They've created something and they are allowing it to manifest, shall we say. You know, it's at this point, at the end, after the body swap, that Crowley ends up living in his car and basically circles the bookshop. I mean, yes, Crowley lost his condo, but he could have gone anywhere, done anything. He's basically circling the bookshop, and I think that's because at this point, the us, the them, their side, is Crowley's grounding stone, their kind of center of focus, the thing that has meaning. Because they just realized that the world wasn't worth it if Aziraphale wasn't there, and on some level, just decided to be as close as possible.
I'm back.
Yes, I can see that.
Which brings me to Aziraphale, because I want to talk about him briefly. I think Aziraphale is a very different journey. Now, from a power dynamic perspective, Aziraphale has had to deal with not having a lot of power in a lot of situations, and I think you see that in the interaction with Crowley. He takes Crowley for granted, and he also exercises the power that he has in the relationship by setting boundaries, but also not being willing to bend, and exerting his authority because it's a safe place to do so.
Very well. If you refuse to help me, then of course you're at liberty to go. To go. Oh, right. This is just how I want to do it. No, I would love you to help me. I am asking you to help me take care of him. But if you won't, you won't.
I won't. You're on your own with this one.
Unlike Crowley, he hasn't had the experience of seeing this other person dead, of experiencing not being in the world anymore, or grieving it. And that kind of experience will change you. It'll bring important feelings to light in your heart. There's a reason this is a very common romantic trope, and it's because when we lose people that are important to us, or when those things that we love are at risk, everything else stops being important. All the mundane things of the day of life, they just sort of burn away in the reality of what we need to protect and care for. So I have this theory that Aziraphale is going to have to experience Crowley disappearing, dying, no longer existing in some way, to be alone without him for a change. Because when you look at their body swap experiences,
And the murderer of a fellow demon. A crime I saw with my own eyes.
Creatures of hell! You have heard the evidence against the demon known as Crowley. What is your verdict? Do you have anything to say before we take our vengeance on you?
they did have similar experiences, but their response, and to a certain extent, even kind of the nuance of the experience, is very different. Hell, for example, is a lot more respectful in a lot of ways. When Aziraphale is in hell pretending to be Crowley. Look at the way he's treated. There's a trial, there's a process, the charge is announced, it's voted on, the other demons are there to witness. Crowley is given the opportunity to say last words. The process is formal and procedural, where what Crowley experienced in heaven was, we brought hellfire, you'll like it, now shut your stupid mouth, die, and walk into the fire already. That is dramatically different, especially for someone who's experiencing a trauma, has just recently been through a series of painful events around that exact issue and way of dying that he's dealing with. Aziraphale's shaken, but he really bounces back. It's fun. He tells the story to Crowley with a joke and a laugh, because Aziraphale isn't surprised, and their assumptions about reality aren't shattered in any way. Hell does bad things. Hell is just doing more of the same with the holy water. And Aziraphale got the benefit of playing this wonderful high-low status joke on Michael, the Archangel, by making them miracle them a towel and getting to pull one over of them, because Michael doesn't even know that it's them. So Aziraphale gets all kinds of benefits from the experience in hell and comes through it in a different way than Crowley does. It's a bit of a game, and yes, he's upset and shaken by the idea that heaven and hell are working together and the holy water itself, no question. But at the same time, he embraces the role, he shines in it. I mean, the performances of both of them in these scenes are just magical. I mean, I just think David Tennant, as Aziraphale playing Crowley, has a bit of a glow to him. It may just be the lighting, but there's almost it's just so good. Okay, it's true. He knows that Crowley has been punished in the past, and he saved him from being dissolved in holy water, as a punishment in hell in this particular instance. But there's a significant difference, because to Aziraphale, hell has always been the bad place. So any actions taken aren't shocking, but expected. There's never been a possibility of death. So you have two very different characters dealing with their grief in completely different ways. The one on the edge of the system, Aziraphale, but who's still part of it, and up to the body swap experience, is still a part of the system with the privileges inherent to that. And then the one who fell out of it a long, long time ago, lost everything, was even physically transformed for simply caring about the world and the universe and caring about the things he created. And he's been slowly rebuilding after everything being turned inside out. So with the body swap, how they feel about heaven and hell, Aziraphale is still trying to fix or earn forgiveness. Aziraphale might say that the system is broken, but to Aziraphale, the answer is to go back in and fix it. And to Aziraphale, there are still two sides. Aziraphale's still stuck in the us versus them mentality. I mean, even though his best friend is the other side, the person who's been the kindest to them, they still use that fallen status, demon, devil, as a way of pushing Crowley away, denying the friendship, and, essentially protecting themselves from harm. They still see it as us versus them, instead of two sides of the same coin that can't exist without each other. Whereas Crowley, who fell such a long time ago, has been trying to teach Aziraphale for a long time that the world is just not the way they think. And it's just pretty clear to me that when they thwart Armageddon and then go on to deal with heaven and hell respectively, that they just haven't had the same experience at all. Aziraphale's also still stuck in a system that doesn't value him, that doesn't understand or even deserve. And Crowley has this imagination to see something better, to create something for himself. And for Aziraphale, despite the risks, the obstacles, the limitations, how impossible it seems, Crowley sees a way to be something beyond what everyone says exists. But Crowley has also had to face the truth in ways that Aziraphale has not up to this point. And Crowley's been existing outside the duality since they fell from heaven.
Oh, we're better than that. You're better than that, Angel. You don't need them. I certainly don't need them. Look, they asked me back to hell. I said, no, I'm not rejoining their team. Neither should you.
But, well, obviously you said no to hell. You're the bad guys. But heaven... Well, it's the side of truth, of light, of good.
So let's talk about the fact that a painful memory can actually contain multiple emotions from different experiences. In the case of Crowley, what you see in the music video is that he describes what happens to him, and then what was happening there were other painful memories coming into the picture, as I said, like nesting dolls. When painful experiences become compounded, finding the root of the emotions really requires peeling back each layer of the memory to find the core key emotional pain. So, of course, with Crowley and the I did not care for it emotion, that's the bookshop fire, the death of Aziraphale. And around that, of course, is wrapped the experience of driving his beloved car through that inferno. And then around those memories comes the experience of stepping into hellfire in heaven, and the additional insult of how Aziraphale's treated in heaven. Each experience would feed off the previous memories, emotions, and without personal clarity would influence how a person would see and experience each part. So that's why Aziraphale has no issue with it. He goes to hell, doesn't have the same emotional charge afterwards, and he can laugh about the experience. They didn't have explicit experience with Crowley dying by holy water as a catalyst for the emotions, whereas Gabriel has invaded the bookshop in season 2, which is Crowley's favorite place in the world and safest place. Gabriel would be a constant reminder to Crowley of that deeply painful emotional experience, forcing him to constantly confront it. If you look at how Crowley talks about Gabriel and responds to Gabriel when Gabriel appears as Jim.
Jim? We know Jim?
Hi there.
Ah, Gabriel!
See, I told you I looked like a Gabriel.
What's he doing here? I don't know. What's happened to him? I don't know. Ask him. I have. He doesn't know either. Ask him properly.
The fear he feels is real and it's dramatic. And Crowley is a dramatic character, but if you look at what's happening under the surface, no wonder he wants to run away at the beginning when Aziraphale says, you can help me or you can leave. No wonder he has such a strong reaction and refuses to help and is so angry. He doesn't talk about what happens. Possibly because he's in love with Aziraphale and they don't talk about anything that might trigger discussion of their feelings for each other. So he couldn't say, this is what happened, this is why, because that might lead to a conversation about what the feelings are.
What I need is for him to be nowhere near me and the precious, peaceful, fragile existence that I have carved out for myself here.
So throughout season 2, Crowley's forced to face Gabriel and even expected to help protect him. And for him, this is beyond painful because Gabriel would be a constant reminder of Aziraphale dying, of what it felt like to go into that bookshop, even though Gabriel had nothing to do with it. And the thing about these kinds of memories and emotions is that all the intellectualization in the world can't stop Crowley from feeling what he's feeling. He could know it was silly, know it wasn't Gabriel's fault, or maybe not even understand why he has such fear of Gabriel when he came out on top in the encounter in heaven, but also be dealing with that fear around what happens to Aziraphale and the idea of having to face living without him and what heaven could do to him. So if you only look at Crowley's reaction to stepping into hellfire in this scene where he confronts Gabriel, you miss all of the unspoken nuances and the larger character conflict happening, which is why often when we're trying to unpack difficult experiences, to explain ourselves, it can be difficult to explain in words why a thing is important, what it means, or why we may not understand all of the triggers that set us off emotionally or cause us to react badly to others. This can happen with all kinds of things. It's why it can be difficult to understand strong reactions we might have. It's how emotional triggers are created, and most of the time, it's unconscious. So it is entirely possible to reprogram and change this, by the way, and I've included a link to a video where I give a very simple exercise which gives you some places to start with that. But just be aware, memories and emotions are complex, multi-layered things. Which brings me, finally, to the present moment from whence we started. I did not care for it, Crowley said. Now, in those eyes, in his mind, a memory of walking into hellfire, walking into a flaming bookshop, Aziraphale being gone forever, not even being cared for or valued by those that he constantly defends, all of those memories, having to carry that weight alone, having to look the person who caused that pain in the face, who didn't even care, the one who's most hurt by what happened in this, who carries the most grief and trauma from all of this is Crowley. Maybe especially because Gabriel remembers none of it, and never has to answer for what happened, or discuss it with Crowley. His mind is simply a blank slate when they have this conversation. And Crowley confronts Gabriel right after having a revelation about being smitten with Aziraphale, being confronted by Nina about the fact that he's obviously in love. And this is the moment when he is goaded by Aziraphale to confront Gabriel to try and discover the truth of why Gabriel is there. And this is the thing. In all of the experiences of Crowley, when it comes to confronting pain, you see how they choose to do so in different points in season 2. Because that's the thing about Crowley. In all of their experiences, when you watch them throughout season 2, when it comes to confronting pain, you see how they choose to do so over and over again. They step into it right up to...
Oh, God, right, okay. Right, I didn't get a chance to say what I was going to say. I think I'd better say it now. Right, okay, yes. So, we've known each other a long time.
A huge amount of growth happens. I mean, confronting Gabriel. Those words contain the weight, the memory of the emotional devastation of the bookshop fire, and then that goes into the fire in heaven, and then that goes into those words. Certainly, though, the growth and acceptance that must have come from going through that transformational experience, with all the wounding, it cemented that Heaven are not the good guys. Maybe finally subconsciously that it wasn't Crowley that was the problem, that Heaven was toxic, as he said at the end of the series. And it brought him clarity, forced him to look at who he was, his feelings for Aziraphale, for himself, what truly mattered to him in the world. I think this is a key part of what happens later in the story, because in this scene with Crowley and Gabriel, Crowley isn't just confronting Gabriel. He is confronting the pain of Aziraphale's death. And honestly, what's happening in this scene is remarkable when you think about it, because Crowley, who's a demon from hell, is confronting Gabriel, the supreme archangel, because they're still devastated and furious about the cruel way that they tried to kill the love of their life. The intensity, but also the role reversal. This is what I love about Good Omens. Isn't the archangel supposed to be the protector, the good guy, the demon, the one to harm and traumatize? I mean, Crowley's being threatening here for good reason and good cause. And the most interesting twists about the story are that Gabriel, of course, is there with no memory, because in a place of knowing nothing about himself or who he was or anything, he came to the bookshop, to the very person he tried to kill, because he knew that he would be safe there. Gabriel, fundamentally on a core level, regardless of his actions, knows and understands something about the fundamental goodness of Aziraphale, and I would argue Crowley as well.
Angel, this is the Supreme Archangel of all heaven, your former boss, who tried very hard to cast you into hellfire and destroy you. He is not our friend.
I think I know what's going on.
What?
I don't go to the outside. And now, I have two friends.
I am not your friend.
That could have gone better.
Did they vavoom?
I think it's fair to say, Jim, that vavooming was not the end result of that particular tempest.
And then in the end, Crowley realizes after testing Gabriel that he doesn't know anything and offers to make him hot chocolate. And he makes it in his special mug and gives it to him. Because that's the thing about Crowley. There's a deep kindness, something that was never shown to them, personally by almost anyone ever. And they have it. More hard fought, more genuine and true than almost anyone else's because of the realities of their own pain, how harsh their world is, how much hurt they've had to go through. That kindness, the ability to love and care and want to save the world at all, if you think about it, is honestly just the most real thing I think about almost any character in heaven or hell. That love for humanity and all the universe and for Aziraphale. How does that exist? It really reminds me of this scene.
This is wicked. Oh, I'm down with the wicked. Anyway, is it wicked she needed the money?
That is irrelevant. Look, I am good. You, I'm afraid, are evil. But people get a choice. They cannot be truly holy unless they also get the opportunity to be wicked. She is wicked.
Right. Yeah, that only works if you start everyone off equal. You can't start someone off like that expected to do as well as someone born in a castle.
But no, that's the good bit. The lower you start, the more opportunities you have. So Elspeth here has all the opportunities, because she's so poor.
That's lunacy.
No, that's ineffable.
Because I think Aziraphale's talking about Crowley and how kind they are. And this truly is what's so interesting to me, that Aziraphale unknowingly gets something about Crowley that's really important. He's stating that someone who starts from the lowest of the low has the most ability to grow and to find grace. This is shown again and again by Crowley, while at the same time Aziraphale in the real world, not theoretically, uses that status like a knife. I know there's a number of people who think that Aziraphale did not believe that Crowley should have fallen, and that he's going back to heaven at the end of season 2 to make heaven worthy of Crowley. And that's possible, but I think about all of their interactions over time. Belief and faith versus spoken word, they are different things, but this is a consistent refrain. And even in the final conversation they have, where that status of demon blinds Aziraphale to certain aspects of Crowley's character and truths about him, you see it again and again and again. I think, personally, that it's more likely Aziraphale feels responsible for Crowley's fall, because we saw at the beginning that Aziraphale was the one that told Crowley about the 6,000-year timeline, and that broke Crowley's heart, led to Crowley asking questions, fall ensues. And so, is it possible that Aziraphale is trying to right something they feel they are responsible for? Maybe. Aziraphale breaking Crowley's heart does seem to be an unending cycle. And I love Aziraphale, and I love the idea of them together, but there's real heartbreak. Real heartbreak. And speaking of heartbreak, let's talk about the moment at the end. I want to talk about the evolution of Crowley's character and how they don't run away. Something they always talk about doing. They go into that conversation with Aziraphale, even knowing that they probably have already lost their moment. They open it up and they say what they mean. And I think at a certain point you see them, Crowley's literally walking in a circle. I feel like their feet, their bodies probably wanting to run, but they are staying in place. They're not leaving. They say their piece. They even, as a last desperate attempt, even after being heartbroken, feeling rejected, believing that the person they love more than anyone else in all the world and have loved for thousands of years doesn't think they're good enough, doesn't understand them after all this time, try to show them that they love them in ways that will break through the mental chatter, the ideals that Aziraphale is holding on to. And then they walk out after that kiss and they wait next to their car and they watch. They don't run away. They stay so that Aziraphale can see that they're not running. And they watch them get into the elevator and leave until that last moment, until Aziraphale is truly gone. And I have to wonder, did it not feel like watching Aziraphale walk just a little bit, possibly, back into that fire, and Crowley realizing he wouldn't be there to break him free or protect him? Maybe. But it's heartbreaking, yes, and it's definitely not the ending the fandom wanted, for sure. But here's the thing, they do it, and it is a growth that really stood out to me. Maybe it isn't the end that all of us in the fandom wanted to see, but as a part of the larger, beautiful, and amazing story, it just shows something we needed to see about this character and their strength and ability to hold fast to what's important. I mean, also stupidly in love, right? Just so much in love. And isn't that what we love about it? Crowley's character has come a long way. I think if anything, Aziraphale needs that same kind of transformation and change. And so I hope in this next season that there will be opportunity for Aziraphale to really grow as a supernatural entity into confidence in his own self and being, and also the ability to love Crowley back in a way that is true and unconditional. I know. They do. They both do so much, but Aziraphale just needs more time. And on that note, I'd love to hear thoughts, fan theories. Please leave below. And if you would like to learn a technique for using positive memories to trigger positive feelings anytime you want, keep watching, check out the next video, and I will see you there. Hey guys, so it's that time in the video, and I would rather set my own hair on fire than promote my own stuff or ask for help. So if you could like, click, subscribe, any of the great things, that would give me a little positive reinforcement, help me shift those negative thoughts.